Today, I'm really excited to share with you uh, how you create connection through using storytelling. And on Strategy with Sally, we're going to dive deep into this topic that's really close to my heart. I think storytelling is a fabulous tool when it comes to enhancing your learners' experience, also their retention, and for them to remember what it is that you teach. I've been a qualified educator and trainer since 2015, and I've always used storytelling as part of our education. So let's look at this ancient art backed by neuroscience and how it can really transform your course creation. Because storytelling itself isn't just an art form, it is actually backed by science. Today, we're going to talk more about how storytelling can actually tap into your cognitive parts of your brain and also the emotional centers of your brain. So let's talk first about the cognitive impact that storytelling has. So cognitive, that part of your brain actually refers to regions of networks within your brains that is actually responsible for the cognitive functions. So this is the processes such as thinking, knowing, remembering, judging, and also problem solving. And these higher level functions of your brain also encompasses your language centers, your imagination, your perception, and your planning. So when we listen to a story, it's not just one part of our brain that lights up. It's actually multiple areas working together in harmony inside your brain. Now, neuroscience tells us that when we hear facts and data, the language center of our brain actually starts to activate to try and decode its meaning. But when those facts are actually wrapped up in a story, something really amazing happens. Not only do the language centers light up, but also other areas of the brain that we use to experience events of the story itself. So this means when you're actually using storytelling, it can quite literally transform us to the other person's shoes or even into a different world. Now, this is really, really crucial when it comes to learning, because with multiple areas of the brain engaged, it can actually lead to better retention and understanding of the information that you're providing. Now, stories themselves have been proven to be remembered up to, I think it's 22 times more than actual facts alone. So when you tell a story inside your course, you're not just teaching, you're actually creating a really memorable learning experience for your students. Now, the other part as well that's really important in storytelling is the emotional connection through the stories. So stories have they are a really powerful tool to evoke emotion, but also to build empathy. So this emotional engagement actually creates effective learning. So when learners feel an emotional connection to the material, their engagement level actually will skyrocket. Emotional content results in increasing dopamine in the brain. And dopamine, what that does is it boosts your memory and also your information processing. So think about the last time you heard a really good story. Maybe it was a case study that you saw in a webinar or a character maybe in an educational video. Did you feel a little connection to it, maybe to the character? Did that journey evoke any type of emotion in you? You see, this connection, what it allows you to do is it makes content stick. Stories allow learners to see the real world applications of maybe some abstract content and concepts that you may have, And it actually makes learning so much more relatable and meaningful. Now, there are some really key elements, and I thought I would just give you one example of some key elements to make a really compelling story. And there are three major components when you're thinking about writing a story. So let's have a look here at some key elements that you will to consider when you're putting together a story. So the first one is, who is the character? Now, every great story starts with a character, somebody who you and your audience can actually connect with. So, especially in educational stories, this real life character could be a real life figure, right? It could be your story. It could be a client's story, or it could be a hypothetical individual as well. But having a character for somebody to relate to. The second part you want to consider when putting together your stories is having like a little bit of conflict in the story. Now, the key to creating conflict is what it is really, it's a challenge, right? It's some kind of problem that person has overcome. And what it does is it helps to really drive the story forward. And with this challenge or this problem or even questions that the character faces in context of education and teaching, you think about a real world problem that yourself or your client or this hypothetical person has been through, and this sort of challenging concept or this dilemma that needs solving, you include this into your story and it'll engage the learner so that they're eager to see, how do they fix this problem? How will they resolve it? Which leads me to the final step, the resolution. So finally, we have the resolution. Now, this is where the problems are resolved. The questions are answered. So in educational storytelling, the resolution often involves a lesson learned or potentially an insight that you've gained. Generally, it's the aha moment that leaves a lasting impact on the learner. Now, I've been building my own personal story library for many years. It was actually introduced to me by Shalene Johnson. She told me, carry around a notebook, and every time some kind of story comes up or something comes up in a conversation, or maybe you have a bright idea, put it into a little journal. Okay, and it's a wonderful idea, especially for you if you're an educator, a coach, or even a professional that's using public speaking or teaching. So here are some things that you can consider if you want to start your own story library or journal that you can consider. So I got a list here for you. And here we go. So some of the things that you can consider when putting together your own little story library is to start with you. Right? Start with your own personal experiences, things that you've learned, or maybe successes that you've had, and even those failures. See, these personal stories often are the most relatable and the most impactful as well. So, one, I want you to start to reflect on past events. Okay, so this is an action task for you, all right, or we call it a GSD, get shit done. So I want you, wherever you're listening or watching to this, I want you to pause the video or pause the audio and set a 5-minute timer. And I want you to start to reflect on past events and challenges that you've overcome, and even some significant milestones that you've had both in your life and in your career. Okay? All right, so go ahead, pause it now, and then we'll be back to finish this off. Okay, so we're back. You've paused. You've done your 5-minute of GSD. I'm really proud of you if you actually did follow through. Now, Ma, you're going to edit this little bit out. But guys, this is a live podcast recording. Ma's going to edit this bit out, I hope. And if she doesn't, oh well. We record this live. We're not going to do the pausing. I'm going to do this with our clients after we go dark. We're going to start to brainstorm some stories together. But if you're on the live stream, note it, okay? I want you to come back and watch this, because what I share with you today, if you watch it once, you'll remember a couple of things. But if you watch or listen to it a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, you'll be more immersed in the content and it'll start to actually make sense. And then you can actually start using these stories inside of your own programs, even your live streams as well. Now, the second thing to consider when trying to build your stories is gathering stories from other sources. So read books, read articles, blogs, across different genres and niches, and note down any stories that resonate with you. I love doing this when I'm listening to podcasts, or if I'm watching, documentaries or educational content over on YouTube, right? And I love a good TED Talk, right? And going to seminars. So this huge array of different sources is also a wealth of storytelling material. So if you come across something that really resonates with you, pull out that story journal and write it down. Now, the third option is other people's stories. Now, collect stories from friends and families, mentors, and even past clients. So often people share their experiences with you, and if you're paying attention, you will notice, because you're always on the lookout now for great stories, right? So when people share their experiences with you, one, if it feels super powerful and it's a lesson that you have learnt from it, or you think that it's something that could help your students, ask permission from that person that you're going to share their personal information, and then stick it in your diary and plan to share it with other people. But make sure you do get permission, or at least acknowledge where you heard it from. Like earlier, I just acknowledged Shalene Johnson for the idea of having a story journal, right? So that's the third option for you. Now, once you've got a lot of stories, what is a great thing to do is start to organize and categorize your stories, especially if you're creating online courses. You want to be able to access these stories easily when you're putting together your content. So when you're thinking about organizing and categorizing, think about the modules and the lessons inside of your program, and will any story actually help to increase the retention and the experience, the emotional and cognitive experience of your learners? Also, another thing to do is you could categorize them by themes, such as leadership or teamwork, innovation, resilience, okay, so that you can easily retrieve that information. Then moving on to number 5, reflect and draw on the lessons. So what that means is when you have actually written out the story that you want to use, make sure you then put some dot points under it, such as what are the key takeaways that I can get from the story, or the lessons that you will learn. So in essence, what does the story teach you? Why is it significant that you are sharing that story? Now, when you practice doing this, each time you think of a story, your stories will actually become more effective in your teaching and also in your presentations. And then finally, number 6, practice, practice, practice. Regularly tell stories. Okay, stories is an art that improves with practice. And also seek feedback if you want to from trusted mentors, trusted peers, to really refine your storytelling skills. So make sure you get yourself one of those little books, right? And when you find maybe you're in a conversation with somebody and you're telling a story and maybe it resonates with them, write it down. If you're listening to podcasts and you hear something really cool, write it down. Okay, so as we wrap up today, I hope that you've really can see how stories can be so powerful for you, and that you can really have an appreciation for the power of storytelling when it comes to implementing it into education, especially if you are one of our amazing sparklers out there who want to or have been creating courses. And also, I'm always pushing you to go live same day, same time, every week, just like Strategy with Sally, right? Again, using stories in that as well. Also, we've looked at the cognitive impact of storytelling and the emotional connection that it also fosters in your learners, and some really great elements such as character, conflict, and resolution if you're thinking about putting together a story. Plus, we've also had a little bit of a look at, how you can put everything that you learn and hear over all the years of your life into a little story journal. But remember, each story you tell is not just a narrative, okay? It has to actually bridge and connect you to your learners. It really wants to facilitate a deeper learning and understanding and a lasting impact in what you are trying to help your people with. Now, I encourage you to really start weaving in your own stories into your teachings, into your live events, into your live streams, and into your course.